Now, fast forwarding now to you're an adult, and obviously it's the rock era. So you obviously were in rock bands. What? Tell us a little bit about that history
Well,
and what you did.
fortunately, yeah, with the rock bands is a little bit different because that was also I was still very much in the Jesus movement, and it was like rock and R&B mostly for me because I hung out with more Japanese Americans and Black Americans. We wound up being more in R&B and hip hop and things like that. The early stages of hip hop. This is still R&B, Earth, Wind and Fire, and those
Oh
guys.
yeah, yeah.
And so that's the kind of music that I was doing mostly. But I also had a guitar shop at that time.
Oh, where was it?
The very first shop was in Mar Vista. And what was interesting there is that I got a few celebrities coming through because they had boats in the marina and things.
Right, and that's on the west side for those of you who don't live in the LA area, over by Santa Monica. So
Yeah, and so we had a few celebrities coming through, and it was kind of cool. But I really had an opportunity to meet a lot of people there. And then my partner wound up getting another thing going on, so I moved the shop to Monterey Park, and then from there moved it to Hollywood. And once I was in Hollywood, man, I had all the major celebrities. My shop was right across the street from Capitol Records,
oh wow, on Vine Street.
corner of Yucca and Vine. And
Wow, really?
the very first client we had was Al McKay from Earth, Wind and Fire. It was really weird.
Wow.
We hadn't even put anything up except a sign and a note on the door. Here's a phone number in case there's an emergency. And this guy calls up and says, how did he get our number? And he says,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm looking at your door, man. I saw the phone number. I thought I'd call. And so where are you? And he says, look up 5 stories. Look up, and there's a hand waving. I said, okay. And he came down. I met him. He's a very cool guy, left-handed guitar player.
Wow.
And it was interesting because it turned out that one of the companies I was working with was actually building a guitar for him already.
Oh wow.
And so I went to Japan and found out about that. But the big thing that happened at that point was that because of all these celebrities that I was meeting, I was able to get into the green rooms just about everywhere. I was able
Fantastic.
to find out what was going on backstage, and I began to realize that a lot of these guys were flat broke. Here they are up on stage, and they're famous and everything else, and they're flat broke.
Yes, that's right.
And I'm going, what's going on here? And I found out later on that, one, they were tied into these nasty contracts where basically everybody gets paid and they're the last ones to get paid. And two, they're stuck in that contract for at least 7 years, if not longer.
Wow, 7 years. It doesn't
so
seem like hardly any time nowadays.
7 years, and that's 7 years of basically slave labor because you're not
Yeah.
getting paid. It's like, what's going on here? Things like recoupables, they didn't understand what recoupables were at that time because it was buried in the language of the contract.
You mean like royalties and things like that?
Well, no, things like, for example, you get a record contract. Well, that's great. Okay, here's, $20,000, go and record your album. They
Right.
don't explain to you that $20,000 has to be paid back with interest as soon as the album is released.
Yeah, that's right.
And if the album is released, the record company also has the right of refusal. So they can shelve that record and say, well, that record wasn't really that good. You got to do another one for us.
That sounds like a horrible system.
It's a very horrible system, and that's the reason why Prince, for quite a while, had slave written on his face. When he went and
That contract was for 25 years. by
yeah,
the
it
way.
was terrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
So things like that are what I was seeing, and I was thinking, man, people got to get educated. This is wrong.
Yes.
And that's why when SongNet came up and we started sharing music back and forth, we got to meet some of the people from the industry. I knew some people already, but we got to meet other people that were involved with record labels and things. And they explained to us why the contracts were written the way they were and how it was simple enough to fix it, but nobody bothered to read it enough
Right.
to say, hey, this is wrong, and change it. Successful artists were changing it. They were fixing things, but the contracts remained written the same way because they could get away with it. With
Right.
the stupid people that just, I'll sign this,
Right, exactly.
And that was a real big problem. I was also involved with another record company at one point in time. We had a lot of dance music going on. And I got to see how really rough that was, too. It was just really bad. This was in the very early stages of sampling in hip-hop.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So there's one artist that we had who was gaining some traction because he had a big hit. And it turned out that this guy, almost his entire CD album at that time, was all samples. None of it cleared. None of it was licensed.
No. Is that before that became an issue or as it became an issue?
As it became an issue.
Oh.
And this guy was a little bit of a loose cannon as well. He was always in a Mexican jail. We had to keep bailing him out. It's like,
Oh, wow.
it's one of those irresponsible kids.
Yeah.
So we tried to figure out, well, how are we going to get rid of this guy? And so we started calling major record labels and said, hey, we've got this guy, he's got a hit on the radio. I'd like to buy his contract. Okay. So we created an album label, a sub-label of the album label that we had, and we sold his contract with 3 other really horrible artists to this major record label.
Wow.
And the major record label didn't know that his CD was all samples that were not cleared. So sure enough, we got a lot of money, and then they got stuck with having to pay millions of dollars. They actually lost money on this guy,
Wow.
even though he had a double platinum record.
Exactly. Yeah, the irony of that, right? So who's getting that money is the question.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I started realizing. Man, this industry is so screwed up. We got to straighten things out.
It's representative of society.
That's very true. So we started. I started looking at how people could get around these things and educating people, and that's why SongNet became what it is, to make sure that people are educated, make sure that people can meet and greet people that can make a difference. Music attorneys, which are different from like divorce attorneys and stuff, because music attorneys have to know very specifically what's going on there.
Yes.
Producers, promoters, all these people, publicists, different kinds of people that would help any artist, somewhere along the line, even if they've already been doing these kinds of, even if they're producers themselves. Like I produced a lot of records, but hey, I'll be happy to sit down and learn from another producer, no matter if they're at a level below where I'm at or a level above where I'm at, because everybody has something to learn. There's an old saying that when you stop learning, you're dead, and I think that's really true.